Hi everybody. It is November and I wanted to talk with you about the value of debriefing the fall season with your team. I'm going to start with a story. When I was a teenager and working at summer camp, at the end of every single week we had this, we would have a staff meeting at the end of the week, and we would just get to hash out what went well, what didn't go well over the course of the week, what we hated. We were teenagers, so we're kind of antsy. And it was a quick meeting. It was really, really fast paced because we were trying to get out so we could go have fun on the town on Friday night. But it was such a helpful part of the week because when you work at camp, tons of things can go wrong with different kids, with the program, with scheduling. There can be so many things, but you actually have to keep moving so fast. You don't really get a chance to resolve any of that stuff in the moment. So I was so grateful. I remember being 16 years old, desperate for this debrief meeting at the end of the week so that we could air our grievances or air our grievances. What 16-year-old says that? I don't know. So that we could get that stuff off of our chest and then move on to the next week and figure out a way to do it better. I have carried that practice with me through all of my leadership, all of my jobs. I think that debriefing is so important. In fact, I had a mentor who used to say this: if you don't debrief it, it didn't happen. And basically what that means is no matter what you do, whether it's camp or any kind of team experience, if you don't take time at the end to sit down and reflect on it, talk about it, look at it, consider it, process it, whatever word you want to use, if you don't take time to pay attention, all of the learning that took place in that experience just falls to the wayside. It just dissipates and you don't remember it. You think you're going to remember it. You run a program over Thanksgiving and you think for sure we're going to remember to do that differently next year. You don't. You forget because a whole year goes by, people had different ideas and you don't remember. I think if you want to help your team grow, and more importantly, if you want to help individual people on your team keep developing their skills and getting better at their jobs, there's nothing more valuable than debriefing. If that's true, we might want to ask, why don't we do it? Why don't we do it? Why aren't there more meetings where we talk about how did that go? What would we want to learn from this experience? And I'll tell you the truth, honestly, I think there's a couple of reasons. One is time, of course. We just feel like we took too much time for that already. We don't have time to meet and rehash it. That's one. But the bigger one, I think, is fear. I think we're just afraid that we'll be uncomfortable, that we'll get into a meeting and people will think it didn't go very well. Or I know they had a fight at the event, so what if we have to talk about it and have a fight again? Or what if somebody's a bully in the meeting, or it gets rude and whatever. We just get afraid that it won't go very well. We don't want to be uncomfortable, and so we don't ever schedule it. But if you're a team leader, I just really want to encourage you. It is so valuable to do debrief. And actually, I'm going to flip this chart. Here are some of the things that I think we gain from doing the debrief. Okay, first and foremost, when we take the time to debrief, that's what lets us learn and get better, right? It's what lets us see what we did and decide if we want to make adjustments and changes. Maybe we want to make a whole big overhaul. Maybe we need to cancel something or add something, whatever it is, reassign people. We get to learn and get better when we reflect on what we've done. That's the first thing. The second thing is we get to make meaning. We get to develop together our collective story, and that informs how we move forward. We get to bring closure to things that we really want to be done with and we need to be done with. And you need closure or you can't move on. And also, we get to celebrate and honor. So here's what I'm going to say. Over the course of this week, I'm going to do a video every day. This is my big commitment to you. I'm going to do a video every day. And we're going to talk about all 4 of these things. And every time I come on, we'll pick one of these and we'll talk about it. And I'll offer some suggestions of ways you could run a debrief, what you could do, activities you could use to help you get to those places. But if you're a leader, I want you to know these are some of the values. And the biggest value is that if you are brave enough to host a debrief for your team, and then you do it well, it builds trust. Your team starts to learn they're not throwing their energy out in vain. They're not just spinning their wheels and doing the same thing over and over again. They learn that they can trust you. If something goes wrong, we're going to deal with it together. If something goes well, we're going to acknowledge it and build on it together. And no matter what, we as a team are going to figure out how to move forward. We can only do that when we reflect on something in the context, I think, of a debrief. So, if you're a team leader, why don't you go ahead, pause the video, send an email to your team, and schedule a 2-hour block sometime in December. And I guarantee by the time we get there, you'll be ready to go. Here we go. I'm going to flip the... Oh, am I? I'm not going to flip it yet. I said this already. All week I'm going to post some videos. And then on Friday, the video that I post will be answering some questions. I might even do it live. That's a bit of a learning curve for me because I'm very old. But we're going to do a video live on Friday where I answer some questions. So as we go through the week, if you have questions about what about this situation, what would I do in that kind of context, please leave them in the comments and I'll address those on Friday. So here we go. Here's the content for today. Today we're going to talk about, in a debrief, how do you learn and get better at what you're doing, okay? So this is the most basic debrief you can do, and it is phenomenally effective for your team, okay? I'm going to flip this over now. A big reveal. If you want to learn and get better with your team, your debrief needs 3 questions. It's super basic. It's really easy to do. First question, what went well this fall? Okay, or whatever, this quarter, however you're measuring it, but we're in the fall right now. What went well this fall? Second question, what didn't go well this fall? And you got to ask that, right? Sometimes we only want to focus on the positive. That is very hard on team members who had something come up that was difficult for them. You have to be able to ask what didn't go well. And then third, what would we do differently? Okay, now, when you're running this as a team leader, you need some kind of big writing space. You either need flip chart paper like this. Okay, this is the nice and expensive kind that you can tear right off and stick on the wall. You need flip chart paper like this, or you need a whiteboard. You need somewhere where you can write in real time. I really think it matters that you take notes in real time. And I'm going to say a couple of things that are going to make you a bit uncomfortable. That's okay. You need to write things down in a way where people can see it. Okay, so it's not enough to take notes on your computer or write in your notebook. You have to write up somewhere big where your team can see, because that is what helps you make connections between things. Helps you, if somebody repeats an idea, you can just star it. There's a way that your room is engaged with you if you're writing in real time that doesn't happen if you're just writing in a notebook, because they can see it happen and they have something to watch, and the information goes in visually as well as auditorially. Oh no. They take it in through their eyes and their ears. And that is much, much better than just listening. So get a way to write in real time. And here's the thing. A lot of people are so uncomfortable with this. And so what they want to do is say, oh, somebody else be the scribe. Somebody else be the scribe and write it down. Don't do that. Doesn't matter if you can't spell. Doesn't matter if your handwriting's terrible. It doesn't matter if you start at the bottom and write way up to the top. It doesn't matter. Here's why. You can, as the leader, use your discomfort in that moment as a way to model for your team that it's okay to make mistakes in this room, and it's okay to say or do uncomfortable things. And that actually really, really matters, especially in a debrief context, because your team needs to know raising a mistake that I made is going to be okay. So if you're writing along, you make a spelling mistake, you can just laugh, cross it out, or just keep going and leave it up there. Who cares? It doesn't matter. You don't have to make a big deal about it. It's just a way of modeling mistakes are okay, and we can do uncomfortable things, right? You get to an uncomfortable question, people don't want to talk about what didn't go well, you can laugh and say, yeah, I know, I don't really want to write on the whiteboard, but here we are, we're all doing uncomfortable things. And you start to create a space of safety in your room where people can participate. Okay, get a whiteboard or a flip chart. You have these 3 questions. If you have, as a collective, if you guys set goals or targets, or you have a strategic plan with your team, this is a great time to use them, to pull them out. Sometimes we make strategic plans like at the start of our calendar year, and then we file them away in our filing cabinet and never pull them out again, and they feel very useless. It's a great time at a debrief to pull out your strategic plan and start looking at it and use it as a way to have an objective measure. What went well in relation to meeting these targets or hitting our goals? What didn't go well? What could we do better? What might we need to adjust if we're going to meet them? So that's one thing. If you have them, pull them out and use them, because again, you build into your team this idea of accountability, and these are useful documents, and we're gonna do something good with them. It's not necessary if you don't have them, or your team hasn't really used them yet, and you think it'll be a distraction. Don't worry about it. Leave them in the filing cabinet for right now, and just use the questions. If you need help making them, leave that in the comments. I'd be more than happy to help you with that. And here's a quick thing I want to say. I list what went well as the first question, but depending on your team, they might benefit from being asked what didn't go well first. I'm not a negative person, but if you use the Enneagram, I'm an 8. Like, I really like to be against something, and all my energy comes from finding what's not working and getting after that. So when I'm doing a debrief for myself, I find it actually very hard to genuinely pay attention to what went well until I got off my chest what didn't go well. And it's not that I don't see what went well. I often have really good insight into what went well and what was working. It's just that this isn't everybody. In me, it feels icky. I think that's probably the technical term. It feels icky to say all these great things without acknowledging, to me, what feels like the elephant in the room, all the stuff that didn't go well. But once I've had a chance to say, this, and this, wow, those things, that was terrible, those didn't work, they're out of me now. I know we see them. Now I feel really free to say, that being said, we're excellent in all of these ways. And that's really fun. So for me, that's really effective. For other people, I know because I've worked with them, for other people, if you start with what didn't go well and you list stuff, and they just start to get feel really threatened and nervous, like, oh my God, we're terrible. Can we not do anything? Do you hate us? Do you hate me? And it creates anxiety. So you just have to know your team. You really do. You have to know, does my team benefit from getting the negative out first so we can enjoy the positive and do it authentically? Or does my team need do we need the reinforcement and sort of the bolster of here is how we're doing great. And that gives us the trust that we need to genuinely acknowledge the negative. Now, Wouldn't it be lovely if your team was all made up of one or the other type? That's never going to happen. You probably have a mix. That's okay. You choose what works best. Acknowledge the reasons that they're hard, right? Just say, I'm going to start with what went well. I know that if you're holding on to some things that didn't, this is going to feel a little bit disingenuous. Let's try to do our best. Or I know that this is going to feel like we're really hitting on some hard things. I promise we're going to come around to what we did well. Okay, try to stay with us. Just offer that kind of explanation or caveat to your team. But the other way around it is to give people a piece of paper in advance and say, we're going to take 10 minutes for you to just brainstorm answers to these questions. And if you know about yourself that you need to get this off your chest first, then go ahead and start here. And if you know about yourself that you need to pay attention to this first, go ahead and start there. That's totally fine. Gives people the chance to do what works best for them and then to pay attention as a team. Okay, so that's what you're going to do. You're going to decide where to start based on your team, talk about what went well, talk about what didn't go well, talk about what you could do differently. What I would suggest is do the brainstorming in each section first, okay? Get everything down on paper. Maybe you got 3 columns, maybe you got 3 papers, whatever it is. Get it all down. You can keep pausing and asking, what else? What else might we want to add? You can paraphrase what people say or amplify it or highlight something. You also can decide, some teams are just really willing to jump in, but sometimes, especially if you haven't done a debrief before, it can feel awkward to get the conversation started. And I often will just start by saying, we're just going to go around the room once, and then we'll open it up to anything else that people want to add. We just go around the room. What went well? Everybody throw something out. And then open it up. Anybody have anything they want to add that's not on the list yet? Right? And that's a really nice way to make sure that everybody gets a voice. And I'll say this too. If you're working, I'm going to say this. If you're a white person who's leading a multi-ethnic team, that's a really good move to go around the table, because often our brothers and sisters of color there are different social hierarchies that dictate who should be speaking first. And we as white people are often just not aware of those at all. But what it means is that people are feeling pressure around the room to speak more often or to say way less, depending on where they fit in that hierarchy. And it can be very daunting to just say, everybody share. That's a very white way to lead a meeting. So if you're hosting a meeting that is a multi-ethnic team, do your team a favor and offer them the chance to participate by going around the room and giving them your permission one at a time. Okay. Once you've gotten everything out, this is where the learning comes from. We've gotten everything written down. We have a huge whiteboard full of information. Now what you want to do is pause and say, what patterns do we notice? What do we learn from this? And then, I swear this is hard, but just do it. Just stop talking. What patterns do we notice? And wait and see if people want to say something. Because what you might find is that people are going to say, gosh, we're so good at these things and we're really terrible at that. And those are connected, right? Like we keep missing that because we're paying attention to these. Whatever. I don't know what they would be. Or they're going to say, well, like over and over again, we all said some version of we're not very good at inter-office communication, right? Like there's going to be patterns that come up. And if you ask, what do you notice? what you're doing is offering your team the opportunity to interpret the information so that you aren't the only one who's doing that. All right, that doesn't have to take too long, but try to do a little bit of that. And then what you're going to do is synthesize your learning. That's a big way of saying you're going to try to pull out the themes from each one, right? Okay, so after all this conversation, blah, 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 it seems like we were really great at A, B, C. And we struggled a bit with X, Y, Z. And so going forward, as I listen to you guys going forward, it seems like what would make the most difference is if we tried to do 1 and 2. And especially with that, what would we do differently? If you can, try to get some agreement from your team. Does that sound right to you guys? Does that sound like the right steps? Would those be the right things to focus on? And let that conversation happen a little bit, because if you can get some agreement amongst your team and some concrete commitments going forward, that's the magic. That's the learning. We're really doing great at these things. And these it's not going so hot over there. So, here's the thing. Maybe you don't have to get better at this. Maybe you just get rid of it. Maybe you are fantastic at a couple of things that you're not spending any time on. You're so great at them, you're not spending any time. You're spending all your time on stuff that's really hard and really frustrating. Maybe you need to shift your focus to the stuff that your team is great at and do that instead and see if that changes things. You'll know. You'll be able to decide. But when you get to what would we do differently, try to get some sense of agreement so that you know. You can synthesize our learning. We were great at these things this fall. We struggled with these things. And going forward, here's what we'd like to do together. And then that's it. That's it. It's super light. It's really easy to do. You don't have to get bogged down or harsh about any of that. Like, you guys have to have no, nothing. Thanks so much for your time and energy. We are great at these things. We do struggle here, and we can get better. We're going to get better by focusing on these things. It's really easy, and your team will walk away feeling like, I know what to do with my experience this fall. I know what to celebrate. I know what to pay attention to. Oh, I feel so great that I got that off my chest. People will be so happy. I'm going to say one more quick thing. We're almost out of time. If your team is really struggling, because that does happen. Like, if your team is really struggling interpersonally, or like, if I'm just being really, really honest, if your team is mean to each other, this might be a very harsh experience, and it might not be wise to do. So here's my suggestion. If your team can't play nice together, don't put them in a room together, but also don't skip the debrief, okay? Make the sacrifice in terms of time as a leader and go and do this with each person individually. It might only take half an hour. And I understand half an hour with an 8-person team, that's way more time than you do with a group. But take the time, go and meet with each individual person and ask them these questions. And take notes about the answers and work it through to what we could do differently. And find out. It takes more time from you, but it builds the muscle in each of your team members, the muscle of reflecting and synthesizing and learning. And it also builds trust in you as a leader, because then once you've met with everyone, at your next team meeting, or even if you have to do it this way in an email later on, highlight some of the areas that came up over and over, right? Do that synthesizing part, do that in an email, or do it in a staff meeting. You can say something like, oh my gosh, it has been so great to meet with everybody and hear your reflections about the fall. And as I've listened to you all, here are some of the patterns. It turns out we are great at A, B, C. And this fall, we really struggled with X, Y, Z. And so going forward, having talked to everybody, I want to suggest that we take these 2 actions. You know, you can get the same effect doing individual meetings as you can get with a team. This is my personal opinion, but I'm the one doing the video, so who cares? I think it's best to do it as a team if you possibly can, because we need our team members to learn how to work together, learn how to have the back and forth and the conversation, and learn about what they did and reflect and argue in that productive and healthy way. We want people to learn that. But if for some reason you just know it will be a disaster if I put my team in a room together, then just up your ante as a leader, give more time from you, and meet with them individually, and you'll get the same benefit from doing that. Okay, that's it, everybody. It can be as simple as these 3 questions, and it will make a huge difference to your team. I just want to thank you so much for watching the video, sticking with me. I know this was long, but I think it's worth it. I hope you're inspired to do this for your team. I truly hope you're going to give it a shot. Please leave me your questions and comments about Debrief in the comments here. Even if you want to say, Dana, there is no way that this is going to work with my team. What can I do? Please leave that question. I'd love to address it. And then I hope that you'll come back and join me again tomorrow when I talk about using debriefing to make meaning together as a team. Thanks so much. Have a great day.